This is on screen. I said what I'd do today is I would show you how to build a portfolio. And this could be for crypto, this could be for stocks, and it could be if you haven't got a right lot of money and you don't know where to start as well. So I'm going to explain the process and what I'm doing. And part of the reason why I'm doing this, well, A, because I started saying last year that I thought crypto was going to go on another big run again, and that so far has turned out to be the case. And in actual fact, I started banging on again about it last year. It started in, well, this was the one from 2 weeks ago. So 2 weeks ago, I said to you, if you missed out, why I think Bitcoin could hit the 100,000 in 2024. And I was talking here about Paul Tudor Jones from the original webinar back in 2020 that I hosted, said that buying Bitcoin is like investing in Steve Jobs and Apple or Google in the early days. And that has turned out thus far to be very prophetic. And so in here, there was the video. On the subject of videos, finally, we've managed to get the transcript to work. For those of you, English is not your chosen language, or you want to rush through something, you can now, on most of the old ones, and certainly the new ones, you can now see a transcript. So that should hopefully make things easier. And I did with this one actually copy the transcript below, which saves me and Ashley hours of time typing everything out. So I talked about it again then, and I started last year. In July of last year, I spoke about, was Bitcoin going to surge again? And if you remember these dates as we go along, I'm going to show you what I did along the way and why. And then, as I say, I'm going to explain different ways that you can start to create a portfolio, whether it be stocks or crypto, even if you don't have a right lot of money. As ever, this is not financial advice. I am not a licensed financial advisor in any jurisdiction. I am telling you what I have done. I am explaining to you what I do with family, friends, and private clients. And it's something that you may or may not choose to follow later on. Hi, Alvin, in Singapore. Long time no see. And then, so that was the 21st of July. That's when I started to buy again. And then by the November, I was well back into it. This was a press release that was written, so it's a bit more spammy than we normally do. But I was explaining in here why, reconfirming why I'd originally said I believed that it could be the best financial decision of your lifetime. And that turned out to be the truth as well. And all of the things there are in there. So that was in November. And then January the 3rd, at the start of this year, I explained that last year, even though I'd only started dabbling in crypto again to any degree, was in the July, I still ended up with my portfolio up 86%. And then on my crypto, and then I was up 30%, 32%, I think, on stocks. And I got it wrong about stocks. I thought the stock market would crash, and it didn't. But because of the way that I was scaling in and buying at the bottom and buying dips and things, I still actually managed to turn a reasonable profit and beat the S&P. And beating the S&P is not difficult. Everybody made a hoo-ha last year. Oh, great, the S&P was up 24%. Everybody just invest in stocks. What they didn't mention is that the previous year, 2022, they lost 19%. So the net gain on the S&P over the previous 2 years was 5%, when the true rate of inflation was running at 20%. Not a good deal, in my opinion. And I said before, just because that has been the way in the past to make money, it's not my style. I have zero interest in putting money and tying up chunks of capital to make 4 or 5% average, which is what the S&P has done over the last 20, 30, 40 years. When you take off inflation, I think it's less than 7%. Yes, compounding is great, but if you can catch different cycles at the right time, you can actually make income out of it, take profits along the way, and still way outperform the stock market. And again, I think it's going to tank this year, so I am positioning myself to be heavy in metals, etc. And then in here, I was talking about that if the BlackRock came along, and then on top of that, we have the halving event in April. And the halving event is important as well when I show you something else. Anybody know what the halving event means? Somebody stick it in the chat box. What happens at the halving? The clue's in the name. Well, I have a sip of my tea. Bitcoin, the amount that can be mined will halve. And therefore, Bitcoin miners that may have been a good bet in the past from an investment point of view will not necessarily be a good bet in the future, because for them, obviously, for them to make the same amount of money they're making now, they need Bitcoin to be over 100K. I'm not saying it won't go over 100K. I do think it will, but that's obviously going to have an impact on them. Important things to note that on average, the halving event has been every 4 years, and usually after the halving event, but not normally straight after, usually within, I think it's 8 months, then Bitcoin has gone on a run. However, the unknown this year is the impact of the ETFs is potentially massive. And whereas in the past with Bitcoin, we have seen it go on a run and then a pullback and then a run and a pullback. And I've explained many times before, those who joined me in the May of 2020 and those in the October, it was technically far easier on crypto and Bitcoin, especially because it went up. It did a pullback to 61.8 or 78.6 fib and a trend line and an EMA, and it went again. So on that, and that's just part of the thing when I'm talking about building a portfolio, especially if you've got limited funds, is along the way, the first goal for me is to get my initial stake out. So if I put 10 grand into something, my first goal is to reduce the risk. And then my second goal is to get the 10K back out again and take some profit. And then I will either take full profit from something or I will take partial profit and then leave the balance to run. And that is what I did with my crypto in the early days. When I first started in crypto, I only put 10 grand in. I was dabbling. It was February 2020. I paid about 8 grand for Bitcoin. And 3 weeks later, when the COVID crisis hit, it halved along with everything else. But then I started to nibble my way back into it. And as my confidence level grew, then I started to put more in. And I was constantly churning taking profits from some and moving it into Bitcoin and Ethereum. So here, this was on, what date was it again? 3rd of January, what I was planning to do, why I was planning to do it. And this is, again, the other thing. It's exactly the same as with your Forex trading and anything else. Make a plan in advance. And for those of you who were in it before, and if you were unfortunate enough or daft enough, depending on your perspective, to have bought at the top last time, what are you going to do if it gets back up to 67,000? Because you've had 2.5 years of pain, and all your relatives and friends or anybody that knows you think you've been an idiot. If you've hung on and it now gets back to 67K, the all-time high, and you're in profit, what are you going to do? And I explained last week, my thinking personally, with me, I'm older than a lot of you, and at my time of life, I am thinking if Bitcoin hits 100K, I am probably going to close 25% of my portfolio. I was and ahhing last time, maybe 50, but no, 25%. And then, especially Bitcoin, I'm just going to hold Bitcoin. I don't care if it drops to 50 or I will hold it, because what is left is paid for. And I still remain convinced that it is not the tulip bulb explosion of the 1600s. I think it's got longevity, and for reasons I'm going to discuss with you again. So again, so that was early January. The 9th of January, I gave you my plan. I explained I'd just come back off holiday and I looked at gold and silver, etc. And I explained what I was going to do with Bitcoin. And then again, on the 12th of February was this article I just shown you, when I was saying I thought it could hit 100,000 in 2024. Again, go have a look through this, look at the reasons, what I was explaining, what I was going to do. And if you followed this, I think I have another screen somewhere. Here we go. So this, I'm going to go full screen now. This was on that day, 2 weeks ago. I showed you when Bitcoin was at 50,000, I think it was, that those who just sat on it and didn't take profits along the way the first time were up 4,061%. And if we go back a little bit, it will show us, I think Bitcoin on that day was around 50,000, and Ethereum was at 2676. Today, the same people are now, instead of being up 4,000 and odd, are out now nearly up 5,000 because of today's prices, and we have seen significant move. I also explained about Ethereum. Ethereum technically was up near 5 grand last time, so technically that's the magnet that we think it's going for. And there's also with Ethereum, there is the possibility, strong possibility, that it's going to be allowed as an ETF by the SEC. And we have seen what the impact of an ETF, a spot ETF, has done to Bitcoin in the last 6 weeks. And that is what's going on now. Of course, they may refuse it, or they may kick the can down the road. And there is a greater chance that that's what they'll do this time than with Bitcoin. There's all sorts of hoo-ha went on with Hinman in the early days. Not Hinman, there was another guy who was in charge of the CFTC, I think, and he basically sanctioned Hester Peirce or something it was called. He basically said Ethereum was fine and I really like it. So it's made it very difficult for Gary Gensler, the hitman from the SEC, to go after them. But there is a lot of rumor going around the back. But if that happens and they kick it down the can, then that will tank, you would think. So that's another event that's coming up. Now then, this lot here, I said the other week, I have dropped 70% of these. But what we were doing last time, this was the folks who joined in the May. If all they did was kept the original portfolio, I've just shown you what the net return is now. If they had then bought some of the extra tokens, they would actually be sat on considerably more. And when Bitcoin was at 67, Ethereum was up here. Cardano here that we bought at 5 cents was at $3. That was up 6,000% at one point. But those who added to as well. So what we were doing is the smaller stuff, we were taking profits. And then what I did in 2022, when everything had tanked, and then early 23, I said to folks, look, I am converting a lot of this smaller stuff into Bitcoin because I felt Bitcoin was safer. They couldn't go, the SEC can't go for Bitcoin because there's no central authority to go for. And therefore I felt more confident. So that's what we were doing. We were trying to find the moonshot potentials to then take some profit from it, either keep the balance in the token, or if we felt that the token, for example, Zcash and Dash used to like them, but they were privacy tokens. And the FBI, the CIA, every government agency in America was after these because you basically could transact in crypto. And it was like your crypto and 1,000 other people's crypto went into a washing machine and it was all jumbled up. Then it came out the other end. It was untraceable. Obviously, the governments don't like that one, so they tried to clutch it. So we took the cash out of that. I seem to think one of these was up $300-400 at one point. I took the cash from that, put it into something else. So most of this lot I do not have now because we've already taken the profit. But that, again, is part of the thing of trying to build a portfolio. If you've only got limited money, is look for potential moonshots. And potential moonshots is the same as if, for example, you have ever traded or bought penny stocks. Has anybody ever traded penny stocks? Anybody know what penny stocks are? Again, the clue's in the name. Stick it in the chat box, and not just Matt from Dubai. What is a penny stock and why is it interesting to folks who don't have much money? And I was in penny stocks in the 90s because I didn't have that much money, but then I was able to take some of the profit from that and put it into the dot-com boom. Yeah, so Wolf of Wall Street's bread and butter, says Jono. Zoe says, cheap penny shares can go ballistic. So imagine if you have a company down the road from you and it is an engineering company and it's profitable, small business, they employ 50 people, they're doing okay, everything seems to be good, they've got a good order book, and you can buy the shares for $1. If suddenly tomorrow they get a contract with the government that's worth an extra 50 million a year, then the stock value will shoot up and go to the moon. And that is exactly what we were doing with crypto. Ashley's just saying now one of his has doubled in the last few days, as has mine. One of my older ones has doubled in the last few days as well. And so again, when I started doing this and I took people originally on this journey, I explained, look, I'm going to buy the Premier League. I'm going to buy the top division ones, and they're the buy and hold. They're the ones that at the time I felt could go up 10, 20, 30, 40, 50x. They've done that now. But then I had a lot of smaller ones, and I likened it to a farmer in the old days with his seed in a bucket, and he's throwing it out and throwing it onto barren land. And some will die, some will grow, and some will turn into an oak tree or whatever. And that's what you're trying to do is by taking small positions in speculative things, then that gives you the opportunity, the potential to catch a moonshot. But you don't just go willy-nilly, and be mega careful with Twitter and the like and YouTube, because there's so much pumping and dumping going on at the moment. It's nuts. My wife's been dabbling in what's called airdrops and things. The amount of time and work and effort she's put into it, it just ain't worth it, because a lot of these people are pumping, And again, Wolf of Wall Street, they're pumping it. Hey, social media, they get everybody going. Everybody must buy this. This is going to be the next moonshot. Guess what? They've already been released some tokens. Everybody that's in on the job, the creators of the chain, they've all got a load of tokens. Woohoo, today, now you can buy, whang, and it will go up. And it can go up 1,000% in a day and come all the way back down again. And you will get caught on the way back down. So what I do when anything that I've bought, and it was all explained in here. Let's go to, this was the original crypto course. This was accessible from the menu at the top. This was the video. I tell everybody, watch this video. This explained 4 years ago, 3.5 years ago, why I was getting involved, what I was going to do, and why I thought it would be such a good investment. And most of what I said at the time came to be. And one of the things I spoke about was the big boys coming in and the impact that they would have. And then again, if you want to find any of my old articles, when you go to the home page, here under M2, if you click read more, you can find loads of previous articles, mainly about Forex. And then this one is about investing and crypto. And so what you can do in here, if you click on here, you can see the 5 most recent posts. So the February one, the crypto bull. And then you can also go down the page and you can go back years and see what I've been going on about. And you will see a recurring theme about crypto and gold, etc., etc. So what to do about buying tokens, etc. This was from the 13th of February, 2 weeks ago, the last time I was with you. And I just said earlier, how many of you regretted not getting involved in crypto? Since that session, when I went into detail again, I talked about Michael Saylor. I talked about my reasoning for all of it. He's talking it could go to 10 million. And don't think Michael Taylor's an idiot. Michael Saylor has got degrees, master's degrees in aeronautics and something else really, really impressive. I mean, he's a very mega smart guy, clearly committed to Bitcoin, and he's just been buying and buying and buying from day one. And again, have a look in there. I'm not sure, actually, Ali, is that you, Abdul? There's a guy in here said that he listened to me on the 13th and he benefited. He bought Bitcoin and Sol and he's up 24%. So some of you paid attention. Yes, Ian, that offers on for the next few days. So Bitcoin, remember, I just showed you some dates. So in July last year, I said, I am starting to look at crypto again. And I started to buy and it dropped. But when it dropped down to here at 26, I bought more. And again, I scale in. I don't suddenly say, right, I'm going to put another 10 grand into Bitcoin. I will buy 5 here. And then if it broke out and pulled back, I would buy more. And if it drops, I will buy more. And I've explained that many times as well. So for example, on the current move, if I was going to get involved now, I would be wary up here. But then again, anybody that bought at 20 or didn't buy at 20 thought it was too expensive, and 30, 40, 50 and 60. But if I was going to buy now, I might put in, if I'm going to put 10 grand in, I might put 2.5 in now. And then I would buy another 2.5 here, and I would hope it was going to come back anywhere down here. I say with the ETFs, we don't know, it might just keep going. But historically, this is what it did in the past. I've shown you this many times before. This was from the beta testers, and then the October. It was breakout, pullback, breakout, pullback, breakout, pullback. Look at that one. Straight to the 55, and there was a trend line. And again, and again, and again. And finally it dropped. When it dropped, what did it do? Support and resistance, it stopped at 30K, which is where it has been for the last year or more until it livened up the other months. And then another date on there that I was showing you was I talked about using Bitcoin as a way, and this was in a live session. This was on the 23rd of October. I think I hosted the live session. And I said to you, think about, if you don't want to buy Bitcoin itself, have a look at this. So this is MicroStrategy. This is Michael Saylor's lot. And I explained that Bitcoin had set off. And I explained that MicroStrategy on the same day had not set off. And that MicroStrategy owned at that time 159,000 Bitcoin, worth at the time, I think, $4.5 billion. And therefore, it was logical to presume that as Bitcoin had gone on a tear, this was going to go with it. And this is an example. So let me say, for ease of sums, let's say I put $1,000 into this. I used 5 times leverage on this because I was very confident because Bitcoin had already gone. And I looked at this as being the first area of major resistance. And if I'm doing anything like this, particularly stocks, I want to see a potential at least 25, 30% potential profit in a fairly short space of time. Well, we got it. We got it within 2 weeks. So you made more money because I used 5 times leverage. I made more money there than the S&P would have made you in 5 years, 6 years, 7 years, you name it. Now, what I did then is from the 1,000 that I've put in, I have taken my initial 1,000 out. So my 1,000 now, sorry, I did it in, I put 10 grand in. So for me, at 10 grand here, because I used 5 times leverage, my 10 grand was now at $25,000. So I took out $10,000 the initial stake, and I also took out $10,000 of profit. I could have chosen just to keep it, but I already have some Bitcoin, and at that point I'm happy. So I left 5 grand in. I did not sell up here. Everybody and his dog, the market says, oh yes, I sold here and bought. I didn't. I sat on it. In retrospect, yeah, I could have got out, but I was fine. Anyway, with the Your Investing Future website, I then sent out a telegram to say I am buying again at 500. And I bought again at 465. So my average cost back in again, I was back in at 480. So 480 here was where I'm thinking that it's going to struggle again. And then here we had a very big clue the other week. What was the clue at the top of this first move that this was going to at least pull back? Technically, what clue is there that had run out of steam and was either going to pull back or reverse? Come on, technical candlesticks. It broke the double top, Etienne, but candlesticks, I mean, I don't use them much, but what is glaringly obvious there? Nope. Somebody tell me, what is that candlestick there? Yes, thank you. Well done, Abdul. It is a bearish engulfing candle at the top of a major move, and therefore that is a big clue that it was going to drop. So at that point there, or this point here, as Etienne said, for a double top, would be where you would be thinking of taking some profit if that's what you were choosing to do. There was also a candlestick on this. Now, I don't bother with candlesticks normally. They always look great after the event. And in actual fact, this one does look particularly good after the event. But that was a big clue. Okay? So here, now, if you'd started with $1,000 and then you now have made $2,500 on the initial move on MicroStrategy, this one down here, then you now have the choice. You could have left and kept $1,500 worth of MicroStrategy and taken your grand out. Now you've got 1,000 to put into something else. Or you could do what I did. Always take the initial stake out. Take the initial stake out and then take partial profit and leave some to run. Because now what I've got sat in here now, yeah, it came all the way back down again, but now it's gone, it's carried on up. So it satisfies my need for A, to get the capital out so I can put it into something else. B, I've taken some profit. Woohoo, life's good. And C, I now have free chips in a casino in a stock that I think has the potential to become probably the biggest market cap in the stock world. So I don't care if it goes up or down. It doesn't matter. Obviously, I want it to go up, but it's not going to hurt me. Not going to lose any sleep. Now, I started off showing you this. So this is for folks in YAF, Your Investing Future. I've just created new portfolios. I've created the Premier League again. So the Premier League is the top ones that I'm buying and holding. They are the ones I am going to rotate profits in from the smaller stuff. What happens with crypto is that what tends to happen is Bitcoin goes on a run, then it's followed by Ethereum, then the mid caps go on a run, then the small stuff. Occasionally, like now, everything's going nuts, although the smaller stuff, a lot of the smaller stuff's not so much. So it's all about this thing about market cycles. So we are trying to take profit from the smaller stuff and put it into the bigger stuff. Zoe asked about Michael Saylor. She said, does he just buy Bitcoin? As far as I'm aware, yes. He is so into Bitcoin, he just says, this is the gold. of the crypto world, why buy anything else? I've seen it in one of his other articles. But I mean, now he's looking like the smartest man on the planet. For the previous 18 months, he's taken a load of crap on social media that the guy's an idiot. Well, he could turn out to be the richest man in the world very soon. He has sold some MicroStrategy stock, so he's been buying his own Bitcoin, and MicroStrategy are buying every month. So this is another option for you if you have limited funds and you believe in something, whether it be a stock or a crypto or whatever else. Just put so much in a month, irrespective of what the price is. Now, it doesn't sit well with me because I always like a pullback, but that is another way that you could do it. So if you've got a spare few £100 this month, you might want to put it into Bitcoin, or you might want to put it into something else. But he's very well worth having a read and a listen to him. And like he's saying here, he's not interested in taking a profit. He says, I'm in it for the long term. This is the profit. For him, this is the exit strategy. And he appears to be sincere about that. And everything I've seen him say so far, he follows through. So that's what he's talking about there. And then in terms of his background, this is MIT, and he graduated a double major in aeronautics and astronautics. So a bit of a smart guy. So very opinionated, he understands the workings of the blockchain and all the rest of it, and that's what he's doing. Market cap. How big can Bitcoin go? Well, the market cap of Bitcoin now is just over $1 trillion, but this is the league table of the biggest companies and assets in the world by market cap. So as you can see, Microsoft is currently double, as is Apple, and the Bank of America Corporation is 9x. So the potential then, if Bitcoin today is at 50K and it gets to the top of the league table, then there is a potential perhaps for it to hit 450, 500,000, or even what Michael Saylor is saying. The next big one is gold. The market cap for gold is 13 trillion. Michael Saylor talks about Bitcoin being the new gold. The thing about gold is, as I explained before, it's heavy, it's expensive to move and to insure. It doesn't pay a dividend. You're limited what you can do. If the whole financial world goes to the messy stuff, it's a bit tricky buying a loaf of bread with a bar of gold. And therefore, he's talking in terms of Bitcoin being the new gold. You can take it anywhere you want. You can have 10 billion quid's worth of it on a pen drive. So there's no issue going over borders and having your cash confiscated. So lots of potential benefits. Now, global pension funds. I spoke about this in the original webinar. And again, I urge you to watch it. I explained that if the big funds came in, and at the time Bitcoin was at 12 grand, I think in the October, 12, 13,000. One of the slides in the presentation, I said that if the big funds came in, the Larry Fink's mob, and Vanguard and BlackRock, etc., it was quite possible, even if they only put 1% of their assets in, that Bitcoin could go to 40 or 50K. Well, it went to 40 or 50K largely from retail. I also talked about in there if the pension funds come in, because the pension funds are the ones sat on the largest amount of money. The pension funds around the world all have a major problem, is that they are all short, or the vast majority are short, in that the assets that they hold are insufficient to pay people's pensions. And for the last few years, they've had to sit and watch Bitcoin be the best performing asset class in the world, and they have not been able to take part because under their rules, they're not allowed. But they will now for sure be pushing, and there's lots of talk online about it. It's obvious. I mean, if you can see something there, if they're making 4.5% on government bonds and inflation's running at 10, their debt to what their future liabilities is just going to get worse and worse. So here, this was from 22. So 22, as I say, was a losing year for the S&P. And the largest pension funds, the top 300, suffered a 13% correction as in gone down significantly. And then here you have it for these. This is a map of America, and this is pension funds that the public state own to cops and doctors and government employees and all the rest of it. And collectively in 2022, it was estimated that they are $1.4 trillion short. So if you are $1.4 trillion short, sticking lumps of money into government bonds that are paying 4.5% is not going to dig you out of the hole. Shown you this before. The American government say now their debt is 34 trillion. If you calculate in future pension needs and Medicare and everything else, the true figure is near 165 grand. So the pension funds have got a desire to be involved in crypto, or certainly some of them. And if they come in with the amount of money that they've got, then could we see Bitcoin go to gold or the Bank of America's 10 or 13 trillion? Interesting question. So a rising tide lifts all boats. At the moment, to say, normally with crypto, we go in a cycle, everything is going nuts. And I talk here about joining the dots. Joining the dots was what I showed you about MicroStrategy. You might say, oh, well, I don't want to get into crypto, or at the time I couldn't put any of my pension money into crypto or whatever else. Then having a think laterally and saying, well, hang on a minute, if they're a Bitcoin miner or they own 160,000 of the things, it's a way of me getting involved. And I was talking to a guy recently, and I'll not embarrass him by saying his name. A family friend of his is very high up in Silicon Valley, is a techie in Silicon Valley in America. And he was telling me that 18 months ago at the Christmas party, when they'd all had a bit of beer, he'd sat with this relative for an hour, and his relative was explaining to him about AI and the implications of AI. And I'm waiting for the punchline. So as a result, the guy I'm talking to is going to say, so because of that, I put some money into it. He didn't think about it. So try to think laterally. And I showed you earlier about Riot. Riot did the same thing. This was the initial kick. I'd been in Riot before. It made the move. It came up all the way up here. And I only took 2 times leverage on this because I was a bit wary with this. But I was in at 9 and 11, I think. So cost averaged in, it's double the money. I did take the profit on this the first time, and I have taken the profit on this the second time. And this one, again, was the same as MicroStrategy, an engulfing candle at the top of the move. And this time it was a triple top. And now I wouldn't be in a rush to buy this now unless we get another run down here in the next month or 6 weeks before the halving. The other thing to note with the miners is I don't think any of them have paid a dividend. And there's one of them, I'm not sure if it's this one, but there's one of them that the directors are skimming off a fortune in wages. They're taking some 20 million each a year or something. So they're not working for the benefit of the investors. It could keep going. It might keep going forever, but I would far rather hold this because they're sat on a pile of it rather than this. And MicroStrategy now bought another 3,000 in the last few weeks, and their average cost in, because they cost averaged in, is now, it was 29,500. It's now, I believe, 31,000 more or less per Bitcoin is what they have paid. Okay. Now, this one, I think this one might be the one Ashley's on about. Anybody remember this one from the original webinar presentation where it went absolutely, utterly nuts here? But remember what we called it. $20,000% it went up, 20,000%. So this one, when I did the webinar in October, I said, look, it's worth having a bit of it. And this is a perfect example of a penny stock and why it went nuts. Come on, can you not remember? Somebody, I know some of you were in that meeting, or you've all what? Thank you, Zoe. Pornhub. Visa, one of the big Visa cards companies, would no longer accept payment for Pornhub, the biggest porn channel on the planet. The Visa would no longer accept payment. XVG, Verge, which is a privacy token, became the first one that was accepted. And I seem to recall it was something like if you put $1,000 in this, it was worth 800,000 at the top of this peak. It was absolutely, utterly nuts. And if you think about it, it's this thing again. Is this thing faster, smarter, cheaper, revolutionizing what's already there? And is it being used? Well, the thing is, if you're a Pornhub subscriber and you don't want your partner to know, that instead now it's showing on your bank statement or credit card statement, now you can be completely invisible because nobody knows. The other thing is if they get hacked, so if Pornhub gets hacked and your credit card details are nicked and your email address, you're going to start getting threatening emails from people going to expose you because you're from Pornhub. So that's why it did what it did. Now, I bought some the other week of this. Now, normally, I was showing somebody the other day, you've got to be careful with crypto because it does do a lot of fake outs. And often it will bounce off the EMAs to the pip and then it will stop. But what happened, why I bought this the other month at 0.003. So it's doubled. I think this was the one Ashley's referring to. The reason why I bought it was it kept spiking. So this was a big spike last year and I missed that one. And then I noticed here it kept spiking through, and these were all 30, 40% spikes. And we were coming up to this trend line break. Now I got in early because normally this EMA would have kept me out. But that has done 100% in a week. 113%. I got out yesterday at the 200 EMA. And look what it's done. When you're down here, where's it going to stop? You kind of think, well, it might get to here, it might get to there. So what we've done, my wife and I already held a bit of this from last time. We only put a few $100s in this the other day, and we've taken out, I think, $180 worth that she's taken out. My wife does all the small stuff now, but she made a profit, and then we've got some left that is then part of the portfolio, and it might just do it again. And if it comes back down again, I would do it down here. Okay. This is, if you want to know more about anything, go on to CoinMarketCap and you can type in here the symbol and it will give you the links to their website, their Twitter feed. You can see it was going absolutely nowhere and it's now gone nuts. You can see where you can buy it. You can see the latest news and you can see what it is, what it does, etc., etc. And I say it's all explained on their website. Benefits about payments, just explain anonymity, all of it explained in there. You can see the top table now for the league table of the biggest market cap. So Bitcoin is the biggest market cap and Ethereum, etc. That original portfolio I showed you, most of the ones that we bought much lower down are now in the top 20. So that's what you're trying to do now. You're trying to find smaller ones that have come along. This one's come out of nowhere, and I missed this one. Come out of absolutely nowhere, and it's now at $3 billion, $3 trillion, no, $3 billion from nowhere. And you will miss some. We all miss them. Nobody catches them all. But the more that you spread it around, the better. Another reason why I'm still into crypto and metals is I thought last year the stock market was going to crash. I still think it's going to crash. It makes no sense to me. And there are little clues going on at the minute. Bezos has sold $8.5 billion worth of Amazon shares recently. Might be a tax dodge, might be he's a bit short of cash. But when one of the major shareholders is cashing in $8.5 billion at the same time as Jamie Dimon. Now, this was pre-planned with Dimon, but he and some of his other directors have cashed in on 170 million of JP Morgan stock. Zuckerberg has cashed in on a load of Meta. Berkshire Hathaway's cash pile now. Berkshire Hathaway has sat on $167 billion of cash. Why? Why would the biggest investment, the most successful dude from the last 50 years, why is he sat on a pile of cash? What's the clue? Talked earlier about joining the dots. What's the clue? Why would he be sat on cash? If you're in a market now and you think it's going to top, it's too expensive. So if you buy now at the top of these run-ups, you are the one most likely to be sat holding stocks that half in value in a heartbeat. And when the stock market comes down, look back at previous crashes, it starts slow and then it drops very, very quickly. So he, the smart dude, is sat there with a basket load of cash waiting for it to crash. Yeah, Matt says the PEA ratio is too high. I mean, NVIDIA PEA ratio now, I believe, is over 60, which is absolutely, utterly nuts. So anybody buying NVIDIA up here, really, there is an old expression in the stock market, is when the taxi drivers and the news start talking about a stock, it's time to get out. It's just the PE ratio is nuts. I also showed you on Sunday that this could be a flag pattern, and this is kind of the end of that run. But a lot of this, yes, it's built on profits, but also it's built on future expectations of profits. And if the rest of the world goes into a financial meltdown, it's not going to be good for them and anybody else. XVG, we've had a look at, we've been through all of that. This is the other website. This is all about crypto and stocks. So I have just finished rebuilding the crypto portfolio as of last night. And I showed you earlier, I was explaining to folks how they can start to build a portfolio. Now, the rest of this week, I'm focusing on stocks, and that is metals and not massive amount of stocks, but stocks that I think have got the potential to make a minimum of 25% in a relatively short period of time. Any questions before we go on to Forex? Don't forget to like and share this video podcast and subscribe to our channel.